The Golden State Warriors have a decision to make, and it was announced that Chris Paul was going to be starting come the first game of the season, and this concerns me for a couple different reasons. Number one, Chris Paul's playstyle does not fit what the Warriors starting five has done for the past 8 or 10 years. Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, Draymond Green, even Andrew Wiggins to a certain extent, they're all players that are good in transition, and they're going to get open looks from three and in the paint by running the floor and getting in transition. Steph Curry and Klay Thompson will just jet down the floor, and whoever gets the rebound will just book it down the floor, and then whoever's open in transition will get either an easy layup, short mid-range pull-up, or obviously, as the Splash Bros have done so often, get a wide open three for each other. And Draymond Green is also a great facilitator in transition and in their offense. And even when their offense has to slow down a little bit and not go strictly in transition, then they still have a very up-tempo, fast-moving, constant motion offense. And Chris Paul doesn't really fit into that kind of offense. He's the kind of player that's going to slow the offense down, get them to certain sets. If there is an opportunity for transition, then maybe he'll go and take advantage of it. When he was a younger player in Los Angeles playing with the Clippers with Blake Griffin, he was a lot more willing to play in transition. But as he's gotten older, he's been a player who's going to slow the offense down and not run as much in transition. So I fear that if he's the one running the offense, he might take away part of what is the Warriors' greatest strength, and that is their fast-paced motion offense. And if he stays in the starting five, that first of all, that would be taken away, and second of all, the bench unit wouldn't have a necessarily playmaker. And if he does go to the bench, then he would get to play with guys like Jonathan Kuminga and facilitate that second string offense. If you look at how the other teams game plan for the Warriors, they game plan to stop that jet-paced, super fast offense. So if you have a point guard running the second unit who's willing to slow it down a little bit, it could complement each other. But if you put Chris Paul in the starting five, then they have to coexist with each other in the same minutes. So I think you have an abundance of talent and abundance of different layers to this offense, but you have to be able to have them spread out over different minutes. And if you put them all in the same minutes, like if Chris Paul is in the starting five with Curry and Klay and Draymond, then those different play styles may not be able to coexist during the same minutes. So that's my number one fear with this Warriors offense, and that's if Chris Paul is in the starting five. The other issue that I see with Chris Paul being in the starting lineup is who gets knocked to the bench. Is it Klay Thompson, Andrew Wiggins, Kevon Looney, or Draymond Green? Obviously, Steph Curry is in the starting lineup to stay, being one of the top 5 point guards in the NBA right now, and arguably even the best point guard in the NBA right now. But who goes to the bench? Klay Thompson and Steph Curry are almost a lock to play together all the time, and they're at their best when they're playing together. Andrew Wiggins is arguably a top 5 to 7 small forward in the NBA right now and has been super productive in that starting unit, averaging right around 18 to 20 points per game while being a member of the Golden State Warriors. Draymond Green is our offensive and defensive facilitator, and their defense would suffer a lot if he did end up going to the bench. And also, Kevon Looney is their primary rebounder and their tallest player on their roster is 6'9". So you can't really bench him to start a game. Chris Paul is only around 6 foot or 6'1", and that makes everything a little bit more difficult just because the Warriors already are lacking height. Like I said, Kevon Looney is only 6'9", and he's their tallest player, so you can't really bench him. And bringing another short guard into the rotation and into the starting lineup would cause serious issues for the Warriors. In the second unit, you have guys with a little bit more height and length. Even Jonathan Kuminga, who's only about 6'7" right now, is having a wingspan of over 7 feet. So he even provides a little bit more length. So if you put Chris Paul with the backups and put him on that second unit, then he would be able to fit a little bit better as a shorter point guard. And back to the issue of who's going to sit, none of those guys are guys who are going to easily mesh with that bench unit. But Chris Paul, I feel like, would have a much easier time gelling and meshing with the second unit of the Golden State Warriors. So I don't see how Chris Paul starting is going to benefit this team, especially with how they play and the scheme of this team. They are not a big team. They are not a slow team. And that is what Chris Paul is. And I'm not saying that Chris Paul is a bad point guard. Chris Paul is a top 5 to 7 point guard of all time. I made a video about the top point guards of all time the other day, and Chris Paul is definitely on that list. I have a lot of respect for him, but he doesn't really fit the style of the Golden State Warriors starting five. And I think that he would be good if he was just Klay Thompson in the starting lineup. He'd be good for just Klay. So he can play minutes with these guys, but being a starter and playing exclusively with the starters is not the best move for him or for the Warriors organization. Now, I think that the Warriors have a long window left for a championship. I think they have still a couple of years of Steph Curry being a top 5 player in the NBA. And Klay Thompson still has a few years left of being an elite 3-and-D player. Wiggins is only around 29 or 30 years old, so he has time to still be a contributor for them. Draymond Green, while he is slowing down a little bit, still can be the anchor of their defense and kind of the quarterback or the catalyst of that defense, and can still pass the ball and has elite vision. And Kevon Looney is still a very big factor on the offensive glass, as he's had multiple games where he maybe only had 10 points, but he had 22 rebounds, even in the playoffs. And so I do think this team has a championship window. I think that Chris Paul adds to this championship caliber team. And I think that he could be great in his role if that role was on the bench. He could definitely facilitate a second unit with Jonathan Kuminga and some of the other younger players that the Warriors have. So I would love to see him on the bench, but with the news of him reportedly starting the season in the starting lineup, someone will have to get moved to the bench. And also, Chris Paul just does not fit the starting lineup of the Warriors. So I'm interested to see what this season will look like for the Golden State Warriors. I think that either way, whether they start Chris Paul or whether they move him to the bench, this is definitely a playoff team, and this is definitely an improved team from last year. I just think that they will have to figure out the best fit for each and every player. And that's going to be on Steve Kerr to kind of manufacture the best lineup and the best minutes played together possible. So I'm really interested to see. I think that they could easily be a top 4 seed, top 3 seed in the Western Conference this year. And in all honesty, I think that this team's core is still going to play at an elite level. I think that they're a very deep team, and they got deeper because Chris Paul was signed to this team. While Steve Kerr will have to manufacture the best way for all these players to play together and coexist in the same offense and in the same team chemistry, I do think this is a team that can compete for a Western Conference Finals appearance and even go to the finals. Mind you, they were already in the finals and won the finals only 2 years ago in 2021. And while they're not the exact same team that they were then, I could argue that they could have even got a little bit better. I believe that Chris Paul adds a lot more value to this team than Jordan Poole did, because Jordan Poole added something off the bench. He added scoring off the bench, but what they really needed off the bench was a facilitator, a secondary facilitator when Steph Curry was off the floor. So their offense actually struggled more when Jordan Poole was on the floor, because he would take low percentage shots, and while he could give you 20 points in a game, 22 points in a game, he wasn't the facilitator that they needed when Steph was off the floor. And now they have that in Chris Paul. So I think that if Chris Paul can facilitate off the bench for the Warriors, this team could be very lethal and really give other teams a shot for their money in the Western Conference coming up this season. But we'll have to see how this goes. So God bless you all. I hope you have an amazing day. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe to the channel so I can hit 100 subscribers by the end of the month. God bless you.